So what are the top 1% doing in order to win in their career? That's what we're going to explore today. So I've coached thousands of personal trainers over the last 20 years in the health and fitness industry, and I'm going to be bringing my expertise here to you today to answer your questions and help you succeed and win in your career. So today we're talking about how to deliver amazing service as a personal trainer, how to master our service. And then we're going to go through a few elements of that. But I want to set the stage properly here. And because, when it comes down to being, a personal trainer, whether you're an online coach or live one-on-one or whatever, we all have the tendency, and I did it too, to think that we're the best, right? Like, why wouldn't people want to work with us? We're the best. We're the smartest, we're the most professional. We show up, right? And so you are all very talented people and you all very smart people, but we can't go into thinking that being smart or being, we're the best. And so that's going to be enough because that's how we get into a problem area with just like, hey, me showing up, being Jeff, that's just enough, right? And so we want to compare ourselves to the top 30% of the industry. So if you work in a gym and there's other trainers there, right? And you have 20 trainers working out of this gym, you don't want to compare yourself to the average of the population at that gym in terms of your service. That's not what we're looking for. I understand. I've been working at and managing gyms for a long time. I understand that there's people on your team or personal trainers, when you walk into a gym, that have trouble showing up on time. They have trouble being in uniform or being well groomed and things like that. We're not talking about those, okay? We're talking about, let's compare ourselves to the top 30% of the industry, okay? So if you took the top 30% of the industry or the top 30% of the trainers at the gym that you work at or the top 30% in your area, that's where you want to compare yourself to that top 30% and ask yourself the question, what sets you apart, okay? What sets you apart or separates you or your service from that top 30%, not the average trainer, okay? Because we want to go to the top 1%. We want to be in the top 5% and go to the top 1% and have success in our careers. And in order to do that, we have to compare ourselves properly, not to the bottom half of the industry. It's not a fair comparison, and it's just not going to help you win in your career, okay? So everything we're going to be talking about today, I want to keep that in mind. We're setting the stage of we're comparing ourselves only to the top 30% when it's in all these different areas. So it's important to set that stage. So I'm going to give you the rundown here on the topics we're going to talk about. So in order to master PT service, okay, we are going to talk about the different models you can use. Okay, we're going to talk briefly about pricing, not too much on that because that's a whole topic on its own, but briefly, we're going to talk about value, creating experience, and efficiency. These are the broad topics that we're going to cover today that go into mastering PT service delivery. Most of them fall under one of these categories. There might be some other things here and there, but these are the big ones, okay? So let's start with the models, okay? So we'll go into the next slide here, I hope. And we'll go into the different business models that we can use. So that's the first thing we want to take a look at. There's a couple of different ways to look at the business models. We can charge by the hour, okay? So we're doing one-on-one sessions or we're doing one to group. One to group is a broad category because you could be doing like partner training or training two people at the same time, or 3 or 4, or up to a group of 20 or whatever. So it's one to any kind of group, and understanding like the dynamics at 2 and 20 are going to be very different and what you're going to charge, etc. But we're just saying in general, one to group. You can charge by programming. That's not quite by the hour, but you can charge per program, or you can subcontract, meaning that if I have a gym or if I run a personal training business, I'm a solopreneur, I can bring in another trainer and I can subcontract them. They might have a very similar specialty to me, a similar personality, and I'm going to mentor them, take them under my wing, and I'm going to be doing the intake with clients, the assessments, the client management, and I'm going to actually lead the training to them, but supervise the program. And so they will get a percentage of the wage and I will get a percentage of the wage for managing them. So that's like the charging by hour models. Those are all different ways that you could do it. And then you're going to have your charge by program models. Okay. So charge by program models might be people are signing up for a duration. So it might be a monthly fee as an example. So like on a monthly basis, no matter how much times you show up, this is what it costs per month. Or people can go into a 12-week program with you. Those are very popular as well too. That's time duration. People are signing up for a 12-week program. And so that's a charge by program model. Another charge by program model is just charging for information. So this would be more of a self-study course where like I've got a course laid out. It could be videos, it could be programs, information, but you're going to take the program on your own time and you're going to work through it on your own. And I might just have a little bit of access to me here and there. Another charge by program model is access to me and my expertise. And that can be done in a lot of ways. You can have like email access, text access. So by paying for the month or paying for a particular program, you have access to me in a variety of different ways. It could be in a community. It could be, I'm sending you Loom videos and feedback on your form or Loom feedback on your nutrition or whatever. And then the last one is community. So people pay to be a part of a community, and that community is helping them reach their goals and somehow. And there's a lot of ways to provide support. But these are basically the different models that you can charge for as a health and fitness professional. And you can use all of them, right? So I often, when I'm coaching individuals, so I coach businesses, I coach individuals, and I coach online coach course providers and things like that. And so when I'm coaching individuals, I often recommend to use a blend or a hybrid model of these different things. Not all of them, but a few select ones. And when they're ready for them, right? You have to be at the right stage of your career and you have to be ready for the different times. When you look at those models, a lot of people think that one-to-one is, not the way to go. It's much easier to do like a program or whatever, but one-to-one is actually the easiest. Okay. And the reason I say that is because it's like it takes your presence, you being there for that full hour, but there's the least amount of prep time for it, right? You don't have to prepare very much to do that. You just have to show up, train the person, sign people up, whatever. In the other models, if you're looking at the program models, like if you're going to have like a community where you have to set up the community, you have to have valuable information. So it might be like ongoing webinars. It could be uploaded programs. You have to have a back end, an email list, and all this kind of stuff. So the prep time on all that is a lot higher than just showing up one-to-one. So when you look at these different models, it goes from sort of easiest, right, is one-to-one. And then if you do one to multiple, that takes more work. And then if you do programming, it takes more work because you have to set things up. And then, if you subcontract, you might say, well, I'm getting paid while someone else is working. Yes, but you're mentoring them, right? So you have to do the client intake, you have to sell, you have to manage the program, you have to mentor this person so they do a good job. And so you are still putting time into it and you have to have some things set up in order to do that. So as you go on that scale, the one-to-one is easiest in terms of prep work and actually having things set up. But it requires a full hour of your time. And then these other ways, you can actually multiply your income and you can create bigger income and more income and get paid more for your ability and less for your time and showing up. But it does take preparation work. You do have to do a lot more administration, a lot more stuff in the background to get those models up and running. So that's why I recommend using a blend of them based on your clientele. But these are the different models that we can use to service people. Now, regardless of the model that you're choosing or you're working with on any of those models, and again, that can change over time, right? We have to ask ourselves the question, if I do one-to-one, what sets me apart from the top 30%? If I'm doing an online coaching program, what sets me apart from the top 30%? There's a lot of people that are smart, intelligent, creative, resourceful that want to do online coaching. How are you going to set yourself apart? Not from the average, from the top 30%. Okay. because that's where service delivery gets mastered, is when you're asking yourself that question. So when you looked at all those different models that we just talked about, that's the question you want to ask. Okay, I'm going to provide some one-on-one, I'm going to provide some online coaching, I want to start a community, whatever. For each of those services, you have to look at yourself and you have to look at your service and say, what makes this a top 1% program? How does this set itself apart from all the other really intelligent, resourceful, hardworking people out there? Okay. And so that's really important to understand. The next thing we're going to talk about beyond model, and we can have more questions on model later, but the next thing that we're going to talk about is going to be the financial piece. Okay. So we're going to go back to our slides for a second here. And so when it comes to the money piece, I'm not going to talk a lot about pricing because pricing is this really own separate topic. Like it's a big topic and there's a lot of factors that go into that. But I do want to talk about this just basic principle of pricing, which is this. There's competing on price, which is trying to have a lower price than the people in your gym or a lower price than other people in that do the same thing as you, whether it's a community or if you're an online coach. I want to have a better price than them. You're competing on price. Competing on price is a race to the bottom, meaning who can charge the least amount to make this and do the most volume to service this customer. Everybody loses in a race to the bottom. Everybody loses because other people that are competing on price, they're going to slash their prices after you slash your price, and then you can slash yours, and it keeps going down, and it becomes who can charge the least. In that, the client also loses too, because if you're charging less, you're going to feel less committed or indebted to go above and beyond and provide this extraordinary service, right? And so that's important to understand too, is that the client loses in the race to the bottom as well, okay? So we want to race to the top. We want to compete on value. Okay. So when we're pricing ourselves out, and again, there's a lot of factors that go to that. We want to race to the top, meaning that our product, our service in any of those models. So it's online coaching, gym, it's a live one-on-one, whatever, program access. We want to race to the top by competing on value. The more valuable our service is that we provide, okay, the higher we can charge, right? And we win on that because we're getting paid premium for the work that we're doing, but the client wins too, because I'm going to be giving extreme amounts of value and I'm going to feel indebted to continue to deliver the value for the money that I charge, right? And so that means I'm going to go the extra mile for clients. Now, this has to be done within reason, right? Like I said, there's other factors to price setting, like what's the industry average? What are people offering for similar amounts of money? And if you're not 3xing, 4xing your value, you can't 3x your price. Like that doesn't go. If you're 3xing, 4xing your value, then you can 3x and 4x your price. Your experience has to go into this, like how many years experience do you have and your background. There's a lot of things that go into price. So I'm not saying you should charge the most, but what I'm saying is in terms of mentality, when you look at your price, we should never drop below the average of the price. So if I say, okay, for in-person one-on-one training in my area, people are charging anywhere from $60 a session to $120 a session, I should never be at 60 because now I'm competing on price. I'm at the bottom, right? I should be at least, and this is the people I coach, I tell them you want to be bare minimum in the middle on the average and provide exceptional value. And then you can even work your way to the top by providing higher levels of value. And that again depends on every individual, their education experience and things like that. But I like to have my people that I coach race to the top, meaning what are we going to do to get to the top of that average and be the top 1% by providing greater value. So this is important to PT service delivery. Again, I'm not going into everything about setting price, but I am just talking about the mindset of let's provide more value. Let's provide a greater experience in whatever model we choose and to deliver our service so that we can race to the top. Okay. And hopefully that makes sense for everybody there. Again, there's other factors that go into price. Okay. So those two things help us understand where we're going. right? So we want to be the top 1%. So we're going to compare ourselves only to the 30%, the top 30%, not the bottom half of the industry. And we're going to continue to ask ourselves, regardless of what model I choose, okay, how is my product, my service standing out in value from everybody else? How is it a top 1%? And then in terms of what I'm going to charge, I want to make sure that I'm instead of cutting the price, I'm looking at adding value and adding incentive for people to work with me so that I can keep my prices higher. Okay. Now, what we're going to talk about next is actually start to get into those other three components that apply to all of these models, which is value, experience, and if business efficiency or service efficiency. Okay. So these three things are going to apply to regardless of what model that we choose to operate, whether it's one-to-one live or it's an online program or whatever, and it's going to help us race to the top. Okay. So the first piece that we're going to talk about is going to be the value. Okay. And so when we look at value, I always coach people that your session, your service, whatever it is you're doing, should be worth 3 times what you're charging for. Okay. When we look at that together, or you look at it yourself and you're doing a self-evaluation, it should be 3 times what you charge. So just to do some straight numbers here for us, if we charge $75 an hour for a one-on-one session, that session should be worth $225 from the outside. And I'm talking about perceived value. When someone from the outside looks in and sees what you give and offer and how you deliver it, it should be worth $225. If I have a 12-week program and it costs $1,000, I should be giving $3,000 minimum of value in that service. Okay. So how do we do that? That's a nice thing to say, but how do we actually give that type of value? There's a lot of ways. 3 keys that I want to focus on today for that is specialized knowledge, okay, above and beyond service, and community. So those are the 3 things that we're going to talk about today in terms of delivering above and beyond value. Because again, we want to rise to the top 1%. Okay. So we need to understand what's going to separate us. A good practice or exercise to do here is to look at what other people are offering and what they charge. Not that you have to directly compare themselves to you, but if somebody's doing a one-on-one session and you work with other people, or there's other people in the city that you can watch, you can say, okay, what are those people charging per hour? And let me look at their session. You know, what are they offering? What are they involved in their session? If somebody has a 12-week program, you know, what are they charging and what are all the components of that program that people are getting out of, right? If I'm subcontracting, what are the norms there, right? If I'm doing any kind of group session work, you know, 1 to 5 or 1 to 20, you know, what are people charging and what's the value delivering? That's a good starting place, okay, to just be aware of what's out there. And this is just market research. Okay. Now, once we've done our market research, then we can understand, okay, the first category in which we can create more value for our customers engaging in our program. So number 1 is specialized knowledge. People will pay for specialized knowledge, but you need to be in the top 1 to 2% of that specialized knowledge. Okay. So as an example, you know, if I want to be an exceptional powerlifting coach, right, and I want to specialize in powerlifters, if I want to charge, you know, if I want to race to the top, right, and be in that top 1% or top 5% of what I charge, then my specialized knowledge in that area has to be very, very high. Okay, meaning that I am the go-to expert on powerlifter. I'm the go-to expert on Olympic lifting, or you know, bodybuilding, or fat loss, or injury rehabilitation, or whatever it is that I want to do, right? And this is why experts, you know, in marketing recommend niching as an example, because niching does a couple of things. It allows you to speak directly to a certain type of customer so that they feel that they're understood, but it also allows you to specialize your knowledge. You don't have to know everything about everything. You have to know a lot about this one particular thing. Okay. So specialized knowledge is somewhere you can give extreme value. And the reason for that is because if you look at the average health and fitness professional, they are usually well-rounded, meaning they know a little bit about bodybuilding. They know a little bit about kettlebells. They know a little bit about powerlifting, but it's average knowledge in a lot of categories. And that is going to keep you average. Okay. But if you specialize in a particular area and you become top 5% in terms of knowledge by doing the courses, by doing the research, by doing your homework, and you have a specialized knowledge, when you work with people, they are going to be able to tell that this is what you do well. They are going to understand that the way you coach, the things that you say, the advice that you give is top 5% knowledge compared to everything else out there. And when that happens, it creates a couple of really good effects, which is loyalty. They're going to stick with you if that's their area of interest. Number two, word of mouth. They're going to be telling everybody about you. Nobody wants to recommend something that's average, because when they recommend it to friends and family, that's a reflection on them, not just the coach, but on their recommendation. But if you're top 5%, if you're the best that they've encountered at what you do, they have no problem recommending it, because when the friend, family member, or whoever goes to you, they are going to look good because you did such a good job. And they're going to be like, oh, I'm so happy that you recommended that for me. Right. And so it's going to create word of mouth. It's going to create a reputation, and it's going to create customer loyalty and renewals long-term for your business. Okay. So having specialized knowledge in a particular area in a niche, and it can be pretty much any niche, right, that you want to focus on, that is a way to deliver extreme value to a customer, because again, you're not getting surface level stuff. You're getting very specific type of help. Okay. So the second way is above and beyond service. And I used to say extraordinary service, or, extraordinary service. In this, you can use any phrase you want, but basically, what it means is that if you compare yourself to the type of service that other people are delivering, it's easy to tell that what you do for your clients is much greater than what they do for their clients. Okay. So again, we're comparing ourselves to the top of the industry. So like, we're already showing up on time. We're already professional and ready to go. We're already have our certifications and things like that. That's a non-negotiable. We shouldn't even be talking about that stuff. Okay. But what we are going to talk about is things like access. What is their access to you? Meaning that you need to have boundaries in your life. You need to have a home life, and you need to have a personal life, and you need to have balance. But what is your access? Are you giving more access than other people are giving, right? Or are you giving easier access to you, right? So that could be, if I'm a one-to-one trainer, I can also tell my clients, hey, if you need something, text me and I will get back to you as soon as I'm on my office hours, right? Or send me an email and I respond at these times a day or whatever. But saying, just you train with me once or twice or 3 times a week, but I also am giving you access above and beyond that when I have time, when I'm scheduled to have that time. So I will get back to you. I will answer your questions. I will help you out in other ways. So access is another above and beyond. Additional programming and programs. So as an example, if I'm a one-to-one trainer, I might be giving you a program that we're doing together in the gym, right? But it might be hard for you to get to the gym other days because of kids, because of work, because of vacations. So am I giving you a version of that is maybe not as good, but almost as good, that you can do at home? Am I giving you a version of that you can do while you're on vacation? This is a way to elevate your service, because you're giving additional programming, knowing that clients can't always show up to the gym, or they may only train with you X amount of times. And then here's the stuff that you're going to do when you're on your own. So additional programming, home program, travel programs, things like that. Okay. When people show up to this session, again, we're showing up, we're on time, we're professional. We can elevate that with simple gestures, like having a bottle of water for everybody and a towel or whatever ready to go. If you work at a big box gym or gym, this is very easy for you to do in terms of, like, they have the laundry, they have the towel service. A case of water, at Costco is not very expensive. And so what's it going to cost you versus what's the return? And you just keep it in your office or your back room, and or if you're training out of homes, you bring it with you. It's not going to cost you anything, but it's going to go a long way in terms of like the value you provide for people. So what are the little extras that you can provide for people that way? Another example of extras, like this seems simple, like a bottle of water seems simple, or a towel, but other extras you can provide people are, workouts with their family, once a month saying, hey, bring your kid in and you can work out, we can train together with them. People obviously love their family. They spend time with their families and their friends. And it's hard to balance out work, family life, and going to the gym. So, by including family members in the workouts once a month, just say, hey, once a month, no problem, bring your kid in and we'll do it. We'll do a team workout or whatever. Again, this is getting their family or their whoever's closest to them in their life involved in their gym time is an extra you can provide that it doesn't really cost you anything. You're getting paid to show up there anyway, right? And if you run an online program, you could do something similar. It's like, hey, get your family involved in the workout. So, here's a workout you could do with your kid. Or, if you're doing online programming, right? What's an extra version of that you can use to get their family involved, right? So here's a version for you of the program. And if you want to do it with your kid, just pull back on the weights, have them do body weight, whatever. We're just talking about how can we get the family involved, regardless of the type of service or program you provide. And it doesn't have to be family. It's whoever's closest to them, creating their own little community in it can be an extra. Okay. And then another one that I want to talk about is communication. This is a really important one. So, regardless of what type of service or programming that you're offering, I find that people tend to under communicate and over communicating is the goal that we're going for. Okay. So if I'm running a one-to-one service, am I sending reminder emails and texts out about the session? Right? Am I sending post-session emails or texts out saying like, here's what we covered, here's our next session, and just remember we talked about, XYZ with your nutrition or whatever. When people have to change their schedule and reschedule a session, how does that communication go? Is there any additional value in terms of communication, like you're giving them advice in some way? Is there homework that you're sending to them and they're getting a part of? And again, if you're running, that's a one-to-one service or an online coaching. If I'm coaching online one-to-one or even one-to-group, I could have the group on one thread in a WhatsApp group, or I can have them on one thread in an email saying, hey, team, it was great seeing you again for today's workout. PS, here's your homework, and I'll see you on Monday at this time, da 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 da. And don't forget to hydrate or whatever, right? It's just, again, going above and beyond, showing that this is a high level service. We're trying to race to the top. So any ways that you can over communicate. If I have a 12-week program that someone's engaging with online, there's a little bit of access to me. There's some self-learning, some downloading of programs, things like that. How can I increase communication in those types of situations? It might be a Loom video feedback, right? So I might say, oh, they sent me an email. I'm going to send them a quick Loom video back when I'm on my office hours, right? It might be over communicating all the steps of the program. So, it seems like I'm over. When you feel like you're overdoing it, that's the right amount, right? Because people always miss texts and emails and they're confused by language. So over communicating is usually the best way to go, where it's crystal clear on how to navigate this online program. That will stand out because people will tell people about your online program. They will say, they were not going to say, oh, Selena over communicated to me and I loved it. What they are going to say is, I felt like I knew what I had to do on every step, right? I felt like I was being guided properly through the whole thing. That's what they're going to tell their friends and family when you over communicate. I felt supported. I felt she really guided me well. I loved the program because I knew exactly what I had to do every single week, right? That's the over communication situation that's going to get us into. So we want to look at what does the average person do in the top 30% in terms of these things going above and beyond, and how can you get yourself to the top 1%? That if I looked at your service and there was 10 trainers at your gym and someone showed up and I just watched one session, how would it be obvious to me that you are the top of those 10 in the way that you deliver your service? It has nothing to do with knowledge. We're talking about just going above and beyond for service. That's what I want to get really clear on there. Okay. And you can brainstorm other things. Those are just some of the common things that I talk to people about when I coach them, but there's a lot of other things that you can do. I want to move on to the third point and their value, which is community. Okay. So if you look at the trends that have done very well in the fitness industry, like an Orange Theory, F45, CrossFit, and F45 now has this new these new challenges races. I can't remember, the name is escaping me right now, but they just held one in Toronto in October. But the challenges that they're doing as teams and things like that. So anyways, what are these things businesses done really well? They've done community well. Okay. So they've done community well. And so how can you foster community in the programs that you run? When people feel like they're on their own, it's very easy to quit and not have a great experience. When people feel like they're part of something, they will stick with it. They will get better results. They will say better things about your programs. They will enjoy it more, right? So how can you create community? Okay. And there's a lot of ways to do this. Let's say you say, hey, Jeff, I'm a one-on-one trainer. I train all these different clients. How can I create community? I work at this big box gym. I rent a space or I work for a company. How can I create community? Well, you can still create community. Like here's an example. You might have a client roster of 12, 15, whatever clients. And you might say, okay, you know what? One time a month on a Saturday morning, we're going to do a group workout, no charge. Whoever from my clients wants to show up, we're going to work out together. I'm going to work out too. I'm going to lead it, but I'm also going to be part of the workout. So out of the 15 or whatever, maybe 8 people show up plus me. We have 9 people and we do a team workout together. We high five, we have fun, and we all get a sweat in, right? And I just do it once a month, right? So that's an example of creating community. You could have a Christmas social among your clients, right? Like I had a friend that actually did this, was a solopreneur, leased spaces in a couple of different gyms, but had their own private client roster. And she said, hey, we're having our Christmas social. Jeff Fitness Christmas social. And we just go and have lunch together one day, and the clients get to meet each other and socialize and, okay, I'm going to see you in the new year and have a good Christmas. You create community within that fitness environment. Another thing is team competitions. So I can have on my clipboard or in my gym, just for my client roster, a team leaderboard, right? Like, every client's name can be on there, or they can have like code names. They can all make up like code names to themselves, and they could have like personal best, and this month Susan did this, and this was Bob's win for the month, and whatever. And I can do competitions like, I can say, okay, we're gonna have a cardio challenge, right? So whoever, does the most steps this month or whatever is gonna get 10 points towards the year-end competition or whatever. I can create internal competitions. So as clients coming in and out of sessions, seeing each other, right, at the gym, they might be like, oh, Bob, I saw you got that extra thing, or they're talking while they're waiting for you or whatever. It creates a sense of community. I can also create challenges that my clients do together, and myself included, outside of the gym, and say, hey, a bunch of my clients right now are training for a Spartan race, and just invite all the clients if they want to. They don't have to, but I'll run it with them, and maybe 4 or 5 of my clients do it, and we do it together and train for it. And maybe they do extra sessions on their way getting ready to it. And maybe they tell their friend who's running a Spartan race as well, hey, I'm training with so-and-so. Like, you should come over and train with them because they're actually training with me for this event. And it brings people over. So these are just all different ways to create community. And these are just the things that I came up with. You can come up with more things than this, but when you create that sense of community, it's going to improve the value that you have and the way people talk about you. So if I'm doing online coaching, how can I create community? It's the same thing. Let people know who else is doing online coaching with you, right? Create a group for them. Let them talk to each other. It could be simple as a Facebook group, right? Create challenges where they can work for each other. As people, if I run a 12-week program, having those people interact at some times with each other, creating a leaderboard in that 12-week program, things like that. How can I create community, whether I'm doing one-on-one live, online coaching, when I'm running a 12-week program or running a gym, I want to create community. There's a lot of other ways to elevate your value, but the idea is to race to the top. So the big 3 things that we talked about today was specializing your knowledge, getting really good at something specific, and having your knowledge be in the top 1 or 2% in that area. We talked about above and beyond service. When you compare yourself to the top 30% of the people at your gym, in your field, in your area, or do the same online program as you, how can you deliver more to those people so the experience is better? And then creating community. And there's other ways to do it too. But these are a couple of things that we wanted to talk about today to create value. So our next big point on mastering service delivery is going to be experience. So when you look at experience, it's a little bit different than value because experience is more about the environment that you create. Okay. So experience is more about the environment create. Value is things that you're doing, access, extras, all that kind of stuff. Experiences are more about the environment that you create for the people that work with you. So again, if it's one-on-one, if it's a group session, if it's an online program, a 12-week program, it doesn't matter if you own a gym. What's the environment you're creating for this? Okay. And so, is it a fun environment? Is it a challenging environment? Okay. Is it a supportive environment? This is something not to do by accident, but to do consciously, to say, this is my ideal client. This is the bulk of the type of people I service. And this is on purpose, the environment that I'm going to create for them. Okay. And so I have this quote here. I wish I could take credit for the quote, but it's actually, I heard it from a CEO of a book I was reading. I can't remember his name, but it says clients don't need you to be authentic because it's very, very common for people to say, well, I'm just being my authentic self. Clients don't need you to be authentic. They need you to put them first. Okay. They need you to be there for them. And what that means is I'm still going to be Jeff. There's a lot of great things about Jeff, but when I show up for a session, I'm going to put the client first. Right? If Jeff is having a bad day, that doesn't matter for the client. I'm going to show up and create the container that I'm going to create for them. So if that's a fun environment, then I will show up and be fun even on my bad days. Okay. If that's a supportive environment, I will support others even when I don't feel supported. Right. In general, we want to create positive environments. So am I going to show up to sessions and complain about politics or my boss or the gym, what they're charging me to lease, whatever? No, because it's not going along with the environment that I'm trying to create. Okay. So we want to intentionally create an experience by creating an environment for the people that are showing up. Now, if I'm working with individuals, like one-on-one individuals, I will likely custom create the environment for each individual. Okay. So each individual might have a different personality type. With one client, I'm going to be really fun. Another client loves challenges. Maybe they were in sports or the military before. So I'm going to be more of a drill sergeant during that session. And someone else just needs support. So I'm going to be very supportive with them during that session. So I'll create different environments. If you have an online program, if you have a group program, then you have to create the environment that applies to most of the clientele, that most of the biggest percentage of the clientele would appreciate, whether that be fun or challenging or supportive or whatever, but it has to be a positive environment. And again, I'm going to put the clients first when I show up to service them. It doesn't matter what's going on in my life. I'm going to show up and be the person they need me to be to meet them where they're at and help them carry them forward when I'm delivering that service. Okay. So we want to intentionally create an experience. And so during each session, we're going to create that experience, or during our program, we have to think to ourselves, I want this to be a fun program. How are you making it fun? Right? So if it's a 12-week program, how are you making it fun if you want the environment to be fun? Right? And so what kind of silly things are you putting in there? Maybe there's little dad jokes in there or puns, or, maybe there's silly challenges week to week or things like that. How are you creating that environment for people? This has a big impact on the experience of what people get. I want you to right now think about some of the top things that you've ever done in your life with your money, whether it be a vacation, if you brought a program that you really liked, if you bought a piece of furniture that you really liked. When you think about it, it's usually not the nuts and bolts that make you think this was a great purchase. It was worth 3 times what I paid for it. It's the experience. It's how did you feel with your family on that vacation? Right? It's when you sit in that chair, how you feel so relaxed and just ready to chill out for the night, right? It's about the experience. So we have to intentionally, on an hourly basis or day-to-day basis, when we show up for our clients in our business, create that same sort of experience that we want to get, because that's what's going to elevate our service and it's going to be able to have us racing to the top. Okay. And then we're going to talk about one more thing, and then we're going to go into a Q&A. So the last piece is often misunderstood or overlooked, and it's efficiency. So we're going to talk about in your service, how can we provide efficiency? This is really important because we're not just servicing once and then we're done, right? So if I'm training people one-on-one, I'm probably training 20, 30, 40 people a week. If I'm delivering a program, I'm not just going to deliver it once, but I'm going to deliver it over and over and over again. If I'm doing programming, online programming, I'm doing lots of different online programming in order to make a regular income day after day, week after week, year after year. Okay. And so, in order for me to be able to create an experience, do all these extras above and beyond value, right? And really show up for people in the best possible way, my goal is to make it as easy as possible for myself to do that. Don't make it hard on yourself, make it easy on yourself. Because a lot of like creating the experience and this value is about energy, right? How much energy do you have to do this? How much motivation do you have to do this? And if it's a pain in the butt, you're not going to do it long term. You're going to do it short term and give it up. Or on the days where you're having a bad day, you're going to let it impact your service, your environment, because it's hard to create a good environment or it's hard to do these things. So efficiency is saying all the stuff that we just talked about. How do you make it easy for yourself? Okay. So what systems can you put in place to make everything run easier and smoother so that you have to do less work? You still have to work, but it's going to be less. It makes it easier to show up and do what you do and be great at what you do. So there's a lot of different categories that we can talk about here. I wanted to just throw out three. So tech, how can tech help us? How can templating help us? And how can operating procedures help us? Okay. There's other things that can help, but we'll start with those three. So when we look at tech as an example, okay, there is different types of technology that's very simple to use that can help us. So I talked about sending a reminder email to clients about sessions, a post-session email. That can all be automated, right? When someone needs to reschedule, I can have an automated text go out that says, sorry you missed it. We need to rebook. Here's the link to rebooking or whatever, right? So I want to try and automate as much as possible. There's a lot of platforms that do this for nominal costs. You can even do it in Gmail, by just on your office hours, sitting down for an hour and pre-scheduling out all your session confirmations if you want to go the budget route. But there's a lot of ways to do it. But the point being is if I automate my pre and post session emails, right, the more emails and admin work I automate and the less I actually have to physically sit down and do, the easier it makes to run my business. It doesn't take as much energy out of me to provide thorough communication, right? So automating text, there's services that you can automate text. There's self-booking platforms. Like if I work for a company and they have their own way to book, that's fine. But if I work for myself, there's actually self-booking platforms. Like Jane is an example of that. I think some of the main training apps do it as well too, where there's just a link to book into my schedule. So if someone needs to book a session, I just, shoot them the link and they book themselves into my schedule, right? And then I get an email confirmation that, Cindy booked on Tuesday at 5:00. Right. And so how can I automate this stuff using text? And then we also have AI as a tool to help us. AI can help us. AI is not specialized knowledge. So we have to check everything that it does. But there's a lot of AI platforms that can cut videos for us, that can transcript video to text, that can help us ideate, that can create waivers for us and things like that. So how can we use AI and tech, all different techs to simplify everything that we do? So everything that we do in our business that's not actually showing up and servicing, we have to think, how can I use tech to make this easier? And ask yourself that question. Can I automate this somehow through technology? Or it might not be automating, but technology might be helping me take a 1-hour task and shortening it to 15 minutes for me. Okay. And there's a lot of different ways to do that in addition to the things that we just talked about. But if you're new to tech, just automating emails and texts and things like that, that's where you start. Just start with automating that stuff so you're not having to constantly email clients and send things out, that it gets sent on its own. Okay. Number 2, we're going to talk about templating. So templating basically we can use tech to template, but templating basically means is that everything that I do, I should have a template for it. It can be simple as a Word document or a Google Doc. And the reason for that is I will probably do that again in my career. So any email I send, it's probably not a one-off. I will probably send a version of that same email to a different client. So if it's saved in a Google Doc or a Word doc or in a notes app on my phone, I can copy and paste and just change one or two words, right? As an example, client cancels, I need to send them a text. So they're supposed to show up today at 5 o'clock. They say, hey, Jeff, emergencies came up. I can't make it. So my response might be automated. I might have a note on my phone, copy, paste, send. And it basically says, hey, sorry I had to miss today's session. I definitely understand that life happens. Just so you know, we want to rebook. If we don't want to lose this session, we want to rebook the session this same week. I have availabilities on Friday morning or Thursday afternoon. Which one will be better for you? Just copy that, send, copy, send. And I might be just changing out Friday morning to Friday afternoon or whatever, right? So I'm just changing one or two words, but that automated text goes out. How many times have you had to send that text, right? Now think about that over the next 12 months or 12 years. How much time you can save by just having that copy and paste, right? Or a session confirmation email with a client saying, hey, Bella, you're all booked in for, Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Make sure you show up 10 minutes early, do your warm up, da 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 da. Boom, automate that. It's saved in a Word doc, right? I copy, paste, schedule. It's all ready to go out. And I don't need, and then I can get that done with my whole client roster in 10 minutes rather than writing all these emails. Other examples of templating things are templating advice. So if somebody asks you, hey, what's a good way, Cindy, I really appreciate the workouts. I was looking at my nutrition. I'm not really sure, what if I eat this thing to lose fat or should I stay away from it? And you might have your top 3 fat loss tips saved in a Word doc somewhere. You just say, hey, Julie, thanks for reaching out. Here's what I recommend to most of my clients to help them lose body fat. Boom, copy, paste, throw it in there. Because that same advice is going to apply to more than one client. It might not apply to every client, but a version of that advice over the next 10 years will apply to a lot of clients. And so by having that advice or my top 3 tips in there, it could be articles, just saving articles that I send to people to save myself time explaining things. Another way is programs, having digital copies of all my programs, right? So instead of handwriting programs out, if I do a digital version of the program, I can print it for a client, but also I will probably use a similar version of that program for somebody else. It might not be exactly the same, right? Because they might have a slightly different biomechanical posture, but I might just change 1 or 2 or 3 things, but the rest of the program stays the same. I save myself a lot of work by saying, powerlifting program, cycle 2, day 2, right? And then I go into that program and I just say, well, Josh is a little bit different. So I got to take out this one exercise that doesn't apply to him and I'll replace it with this. But everything else can stay the same, right? And so by templating these type programs, you save yourself hundreds and hundreds of hours of programs, not just for the next week, but for the next year and 2 years and 5 years and 10 years. The longer you're in it, the more you're going to save yourself. And again, you can tweak them as you go. So this is an example of how can we template our lives to make it easier for us to give high-level service, top-notch service, but do it more efficiently and effectively, regardless if it's a 12-week program or a one-on-one service or online coaching. It applies to all those. The third one that I wanted to talk about was operating procedures. Okay. So we want to have operating procedures for ourselves. How do I do things? Because it's a lot harder to show up and do things and have to think about it than just to show up and follow your own operating procedures. So you should have some guidelines for yourself that are, maybe written out in a Google Doc or a Word doc or on a notes on your phone or whatever, saved somewhere, and it's some sort of, Notion or Monday. These types of apps have these places you can store these in, and it's operating procedures, which is like, how do I start a session? How do I end a session? If somebody asks for a refund, what do I do? How do I prep for a renewal, right? How do I, prep for this situation when whatever. So when you have operating procedures, you have to think less and you get to do more. There will still be some situations, 20% of the time, you have to think and do something a little different because it doesn't apply. But when you get super busy, when you get tired, when life strikes. Life could be, I had a kid and I'm looking after this human being now, or I had a grandchild or somebody died or whatever. How can my business operate effectively with my brain not having to be 100% plugged in outside of the session itself, outside of the service itself? And that's what operating procedures does for us. So it's like, this is how I prep for a session. So meaning prep for a session, it might be like 10 minutes before the client comes, I pull up their file, I check in on with their family so that I know, like I remember their kids' names. So when they come, I can ask them about it. I look at the last workout we did, and I look at quickly at the periodization where we're at, and then boom, I'm ready to go. And if I have 3 clients back to back, I might prep all 3 or have them on my clipboard. So when the session comes or whatever. So how do I prep for a session? Might be operating procedures. How do I close a session? It might be operating procedures so that I don't have to think when it's my 8th client of the day. I don't have to think. This is my operating procedure. I would close a session. When someone comes up for renewal, this is the process I follow. 30 days out, I do this. At 1 week out, I do this. And then I do this. And this is how it's done. Again, will there be one-off situations? Yes. But the more operating procedures you have in your business, and you can update your operating procedures as you go and as you see fit, but it creates efficiency within your business because you just do things the same way all the time. And if you're ever at a point in your business where you just don't have mental clarity or you're going through a tough time, it's easy to just look at the operating document, remind yourself, and go show up and do it and give a high level service with less effort. Okay. And so creating business efficiency is all about how can I create systems that make it easier and smoother for me to give the best possible experience. So those are the areas of mastering PT service. So just going to review quickly what we've covered over today. So what we talked about today is that we want to deliver 1% service. So the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to compare ourselves to the average. We're going to take out the whole bottom half of the industry that's maybe not doing what they should be doing in their life. And we're going to focus on what are the top 30% doing and compare ourselves to the top 30%. From there, we're going to say, how do I race to the top? How do I be the top 1% in the experience and the service that I deliver? Okay. And so we're going to, regardless of the model that we choose, we're going to choose an appropriate model that plays to my strengths. Right. And so if I'm really charismatic and good in person, like why would I, just do programming and sit at home behind a laptop? Doesn't make sense. We're going to choose a model that plays to our strengths, and we can integrate multiple models and use a hybrid, right? But we're going to try and race to the top of their income and not compete at the bottom by delivering exceptional service. So we deliver that exceptional service by, number one, having specialized knowledge, right? So having a niche, having specialized knowledge, being in the top 1 to 2% for that particular area in terms of what we know and what we can do to help people in that niche. Okay. Number 2, by having extraordinary value in our service or the product that we deliver, through above and beyond service. Okay. So how can we go above and beyond, deliver what other people don't? That it's very clear that what they get from you is superior than what they would get from anybody else. How can we create community, right? More community people have, the more engaged they are, the more value they're going to see from it. Then we want to implement a great experience. That's about the container we create, the environment we create, and our language and our tone and the things that we choose to do with our clients. And it could be supportive. It can be positive. It should all be positive in some respect, but it could be challenging. It could be supportive. It could be fun, right? But let's consciously create an environment. And then the last piece is for us is efficiency. How do I make it easier for myself to do all that and do it at a very high level? By putting systems in place. And when you do all of those things, chances are even asking yourself these questions like, how can I give 1% service is going to put you to the top of the pack. And people will notice if you deliver 1% service, word will get out there. People will talk about you and you will be getting referral business. And it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of how long. Okay. And so those are things that I hope you got value from in implementing and mastering service delivery.